Hey everybody. I'm so sorry that I couldn't make it there today in person. But nonetheless, here I am. So a couple of questions that I know you guys typically ask your guests. I was curious to know what you asked your guests. So I asked Dr. Shalise to give me some of those questions. So one of them I know is that you ask about um explaining what's my process in picking my speech topic. So Dr. Shalise gave me a little bit of guidance in terms of having an informative speech, something about my life, I think the prompt was, but having this core message, right? And so um thinking about many messages that I like to convey to my students about my life, things that I've learned about that I've shared with my students on various occasions, right? What have I shared with my students? What type of messages have I given them in the past when I've mentored them? Um, when I've had conversations with them, sidebar conversations that may not have had anything to do with class or something like that, when I've advised them on maybe some personal things that they've come to me with. And so I kind of just, thought back to what's important and what's relevant now, what's important now. And so um, the only one topic was very top of mind at the moment. So it wasn't hard to come up with the topic. So that's how that came up. Recently, I had a conversation with a student about being the only one. And so it was relatively easy to come up with that. Um, but pulling on my life experience is relatively easy, especially when I'm talking to an audience that I know can relate to a lot of what I'm talking about. So yeah, it's fun. And I love doing this. So it's not hard for me to come up with topics. So that's that question. Um, how do you handle feeling nervous? So it may look as though I'm not ever nervous, but I am. I do get nervous. And I think that how do I handle being nervous? I just let myself be nervous, but understand that I got to get a job done, right? And I lean on myself, like, all right, Jess, you got this. Like, that's all I can do. I take a couple of deep breaths, I ground myself before I have to, speak. Usually when I get nervous, I don't get nervous like on a daily basis, like when I have to speak to my class and teach and stuff. When I do get nervous is like the first day of class, because I'm meeting a new audience, right? And I have to read the room. So that is when I get nervous because I have to kind of find my place with everybody, right? And that is challenging. Um, because you can't be everything to everybody, right? And not everybody's gonna like you know what I mean? And so you just have to understand that. And that takes just years of practice. It's just practice. The more you do it, the easier it becomes. Um, but I actually like speaking to people in kind of a public setting. Because at this point in my life, I feel like I have a lot to say. And that just comes with time. But the more you do it, the easier it becomes. And the more prepared you are, the easier it is, right? So, you know, just winging it doesn't necessarily work at the earlier part of your life. Um, Later in life, it depends. Um, for example, if you come into one of my classes, chances are I won't necessarily have a lot of notes in front of me, depending on the class. That's because I've been teaching that content for so long. That's just kind of part of who I am. But there's some classes that I will have notes in front of me, right? Because that material isn't necessarily ingrained in me like that. That's part of my daily or part of who I am or whatever. It's a little bit beyond the scope of me. But it is part of my expertise per se, right? But it's not something that I kind of chew on every day. So it just depends. But preparation is definitely key, whether that's something that comes natural to you or something that you have to learn and kind of carry with you. Um, so that's how I deal with nerves. And then also nerves, I just sometimes you just have to, you know how they say you have like little tricks, oh, envision the people naked in the audience, which never really works. It doesn't work. That's just kind of silly. But um I in grad school, I was really nervous about presentations. And so what I used to do was just treat it like an acting gig. Not that I'm an actress. I never did acting, but I treated it like, oh, I'm just playing a role. And it helped me for a while. And then I just started exaggerating my confidence, like just pretending like I was confident, right? And it just kind of stuck. And so I just now it's almost like you can't tell me nothing. I'm going to come up here and I'm going to be confident and hush your mouth until I ask you something, right? And so it's just this kind of mindset, it's like I'm gonna go up there and I'm gonna do a great job. And you're gonna listen to me. Okay. Conviction, right? Conviction. I always tell my students, you can be nervous, you can be uneasy, but as long as you deliver with conviction, you'll be all right. Okay. All right. And then how do you connect with listeners in the audience? Eye contact. Look at people. And I know that makes you uncomfortable for some of us. Some of us are uncomfortable with that. But it is the most tender, vulnerable, human thing you can do. Look at somebody in the eye. Okay. And the way in which I connect is just that. I take the time to talk to people. It doesn't matter how big the audience, how small, I'll pick someone out and talk to them, right? And whatever it is that I'm talking about, right? And so right now, when I just said right, I would say that to a person, okay? And I also walk through the room and I ask questions. Does that make sense? Is that clear? What do you think? And I pull the people into the conversation. I don't ever just lecture at the front of the room for an hour. So that's why this is kind of weird, that I'm like talking to a screen and not engaging with you guys. Okay. So I bring the people in. And the other thing is too, that I knock down the power dynamic. So I don't speak at the front of the room all the time because I don't want there to be this kind of divide between me and the audience, right? Me at the podium. And presentation of yourself is also a way that I connect with my audience, right? I'm not in a navy suit in front of the room with my students. Not necessary. Okay. I come to school in, regular clothes, right? Despite my credentials, despite me being the professor at the front of the room, but I don't stay at the front of the room. And that allows me to connect. Okay. So if you guys have any other questions for me, the cool thing is that I'm on campus. All right. My office is in building 500 in 505B. I have a couch and snacks. Um, and my students say that I have a cool vibe in my office, whatever that means. So feel free to stop by. My office hours are on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 1 to 2:30, and by appointment. So yeah, come say hi. And thank you for your time. This has been awesome.